Welcome to Metaphysics. This is the beginning of part 1, includes the introduction, arguments, and the ancients. So what is metaphysics? The gist of it is this. It is the study of the nature and structure of reality. One branch of metaphysics is ontology, from the Greek ontos and ology. Ology, of course, means study or science of, and ontos in Greek means thing, although I typically translate it as stuff. Now, the study of things in this case doesn't mean studying particular things, like studying kiwis, both the bird, the fruit, also a third thing, New Zealanders, or studying roast beef sandwiches, etc. It means studying the constituents of reality, metaphysical entities. So, if you were an ontologist, you would be concerned about such things as what is really real for real. So, ontological questions would be things like, is time real? Is space real? Is the soul real? Now, metaphysics, like all branches of philosophy, is full of questions and problems. Here are some general classic questions in metaphysics. One is, does God exist? But of course, that's kind of a question that should be asked second, because the first question, before you can answer, does God exist, is you got to know what you're asking about. So a critical question is also, what is the nature of God? So to know if God exists, you got to know what you're talking about when you're talking about God. There's also questions about what is space, what is time, what is a person? Not in the sense of like a legal definition, what is legally a person, or what is necessarily ethically or morally a person, but metaphysically. And in some accounts, as we'll see, a person might be a soul, or if you're a materialist, and more on philosophical materialism later, you might regard the person as their brain. Another question is, what, if anything, makes individual entities the same type? So, in virtue of what are all humans human? In virtue of what are all blue things blue, if anything? And of course, there's a lot of sci-fi stuff here, like, is time travel possible or not? Also, are there other universes? So if you've seen, for example, it's very popular in science fiction, also superhero movies, which are kind of science fiction-y, there's the question of, and the notion of, other realities. So for example, if you've seen the DC Detective Comics shows, like Arrow and Flash, they go to alternative universes, which is something long explored by both DC and Marvel in the comics, goes way back. Also, in other science fiction, a common theme is other realities, in which they're like ours, but different in other ways. The Rick and Morty show features a lot of alternative realities, and that's a metaphysical question. Are there other realities? Now, there are also many metaphysical problems, not in the sense of things that are wrong with metaphysics, but in terms of things that metaphysicians, people who do metaphysics, are trying to solve. One classic that goes way back, at least to our good dead friend Plato, and most likely before, is what we call the problem of universals. This is what it is to determine what it is for two individuals, sometimes referred to as tokens, like in a board game, sometimes referred to as instances or particulars. What is it for those two individuals to be of the same type? So it's an interesting question. We group humans together as humans, blue things as blue, cats as cats, horses as horses, and what is it that makes them the same type? And philosophers have given various answers, and we'll look at some of these. There's also, going along with this, if we're talking about what it is to make two things of the same type, there's also the question of what individuates entities? What makes one thing one thing? And going along with this is also the question of what makes that thing what it is. So we kind of have three big questions going under the problem of universals. The first is, what is it for individuals to be in groups, to be classified as groups? Secondly, is what makes individuals individuals? So using the example of humans, what is it that makes, both me and Joe Biden both humans? The second question would be, why am I not Joe Biden? Why is Joe Biden not me? And then the third thing is determining what makes a thing what it is. So this would be the question of, what is it that makes me human? What is it that makes Joe Biden human? Another long-standing problem in metaphysics is the nature of mind. And this involves, because it's been addressed quite a long time, that there's kind of like pre-established sides, almost like political parties. So one question is the mind physical, a material entity? Simplest example would be being the brain. Or is it non-physical in nature? The usual example would be being a soul, an incorporeal soul. Kind of crudely, the debate is, are you your brain or are you a soul? And of course it gets more complicated than that, but that's the basic. There's also the question of whether the person, the mind, is a single thing. It's what's called, a substance. And we'll talk a lot about substances later. Or is it a collection of properties? Like, is it made up of a bunch of, parts put together? Or something else? And philosophers debate about this quite a bit. Now, a question about mind that's really important personally to all of us is the question of whether the mind can survive the death of the body. Now, in many religions, they take the answer to be yes. That when a person dies, the person goes on, if they're good, to a heaven or heaven-like place. If they're bad, to a hell or hell-like place. Or perhaps they get reincarnated as something, get reborn. And so, very important question, namely, is death the end? And that's a metaphysical question. Now, connected to the nature of mind is what's called the problem of personal identity. And philosophers have been addressing this for a long time. It's also something that's very popular in science fiction. It makes a good, story hook, and plot twist. So when it comes to the question of personal identity, there's sort of three sub-problems here. The first is the question of, what is it to be a person? Again, not like in the legal sense. What do the laws say? Because that's whatever the people in power decide. And that could exclude, people, and it has excluded people. It's also distinct from sort of the moral question of what it is to be a person morally. So it's a metaphysical question of, metaphysically, what separates a person from being a non-person. And we'll look at people like our good dead friend John Locke, and also our good dead friend David Hume, and also, some other good dead friends. Also me. I'm still alive as this is being recorded. Second question is this. Once you figure out what it is to be a person, the second question is, what is it to be the same person across time? Namely, what is it that connects the me of now to the me of long ago, or the me of the far future? Now, science fiction often likes to get into this personal identity stuff, raising questions about, what if you clone somebody, or what if you copy a person's memories and put them into another body, or put them into a machine. So suppose all your memories and personality is duplicated on a computer and then uploaded into a new body. Would that still be you? And we'll see more of this in the future. Talking about it, but we'll probably see more of that in the future as well. Lastly is the death question again. What a person is has a strong impact on whether it can persist after death or not. And those are some of the main problems, but not all of them, that we'll look at. And these are kind of some of the biggies in metaphysics. The problem of universals, the nature of mind, and the problem of personal identity.